villages, so both urban and rural settlements, where we can see a low income and a distance from the center. And this enables us, looking at the periphery and looking at Arab society in Israel, which I'll explain in a minute, this enables us to add more sort of diversity into the index. So we don't look only on women as one group, but we look at various groups of women and try to understand their different situations. Arab society in Israel. So what we look at here is Arabs that are Israeli citizens. I just don't know how much everybody is familiar with the society in Israel. So in general, we have there are Arabs who are citizens of Israel, and they are the Central Bureau of Statistics in Israel actually includes them in every sort of counting or statistics, and this is the part of the Arab population that we look at in this index. Okay, so what I want to start with is just one example. Okay, when we set out to do this, we were, we had to face the gap that most of you, ones that work for feminist organizations or women's organizations, know very well. That it's the general perception, or in Israel for sure, the general public understanding was that women's situation is just getting better and better all the time, and women are doing great, and we don't know what your problem is. And this is conflicted with a lot of the understanding of most of women's organizations and feminist organizations who say, no, in reality, many of the structures, the social structures remain the same. Gender gaps still exist, gender bias is there, all forms that we've known from the past still exist. So we set out to look at what has happened over time. And I'm giving you this as an example. If you look at women's average monthly salary, this is Israeli women general counting, and you look since 1996 to 2014, this is the gray line, you can see that it's slowly growing, right? So women's situation has improved. This is what we see. But now, when we compare it to men is the black line, and you can see what we mean when we talk about gender gaps. Okay, so when we look at both lines together, you can see that men's situation, this is of course the basic comparison of monthly salary, which is very, very common. You can see if every country measures this. So when you look at the average monthly salary of men and women over time, you can see that the gap is completely constant and even slightly growing. This is the main point, that when you look at gender gaps, you don't only ask about the advancement of women, but you ask about the advancement of women compared to men. When you look at gender gaps, you get a completely different picture. This is the picture that while women's situation, and you can see at the beginning, the numbers here are in Israeli shekels, so this is the monthly salary. You can see that the gap has actually slightly grown from 1996 to 2014. When you look over time, you can identify gender gaps very easily. I'm going to give a few more examples of this just to show you that this is in all areas of life. So this is number of CEOs, okay? So chief executives, leading power positions in companies in Israel. You can see that the gray line is women, very low. Number of CEOs very slightly growing. And the gap between women and men is very, very big. And the gap is even still growing when you look at it over time. Education. Now, higher education is the one area, and I'm sure since this is a worldwide phenomenon, I'm sure most of you are aware of this, that women have achieved higher education, have achieved the level of men. So in Israel today, you can see if you look at the picture of the rate of those with 16 plus years of education, this means that they have a master's degree. And you can see in 1996 compared with 2013, you see that women and men are currently in higher education are equal. achieved the level of men in higher education. But, as we saw before, it does not translate into the labor force, and it does not translate into salaries. This is the main important finding for us, that for years, education and higher education was seen as the main tool and the main route to achieve equality, to achieve gender equality. But as we can see, it doesn't work. This is not the only answer. So I'm not saying that higher education does not improve the salary. It does. But it's not the only explanation for what is happening in society. It's not the only explanation for gender gaps. We have to look in other areas as well if we want to understand the full picture. And this is why when we look at employment, for example, this is the picture of what is happening in different employment or fields of work. So, of course, you can see that in the teaching and caregivers profession, there is the very big woman, the very small man. It's because these are the numbers, these are the areas where you can see many, many women working, and these are the areas that are earning least than all the others. And when you look at other areas like high tech, and you look at engineers and architectures, for example, you see, again, a very clear gender gap. You see the division of labor in the labor force is maintained in many ways. And this is another factor that is very important to us to think about when we think of the total, the overall experience of women's lives and what's affecting their ability to be complete and full participants in the labor market is, for example, the issue of, or the number of children. And this is a OECD birth rate, fertility rate table, and it shows that Israel is where you see the red arrow. This is Israel, highest level of birth rate in all of the OECD countries. And you can try and find your own country in the table if you're interested. The OECD average is 2.1, and in Israel it's 3.1. So for us, this is very, very central in understanding women's lives, okay? Because the number of children has a huge effect on women's lives, their ability to work, the number of hours that they choose, or are able, not choose, able to work, the kind of professions that they work in, their total responsibilities, the number of hours that they work without pay, which is for us a very, very important point, okay? What we call invisible work. How much work is done by women in the home, in family, taking care of children, taking care of the house. This is housework and care work, which is not paid for and not counted for in the general economy of the country. This is all very much related to the number of children. So this is a very important factor. And this is, so when we look at work and family, the more sort of, we try to look at it through the various data that we can collect, you can see that with the purple title, Women versus Men as Heads of Single-Parent Families, of course, no comparison. It's just many, many more single-parent families that are headed by women, and this is, of course, a worldwide phenomenon. When you look at part-time workers, you see many, many more women, the gray line, working part-time. You look below, the two tables below, you can see women working part-time due to homemaking. This is women reporting to, in census they say, why do you work part-time? This is the explanation. Homemaking, or staying at home. And women unemployed due to homemaking, and this is all this data just gives a very clear picture of the importance of family and children in women's ability to take the full part in the labor. Just a few more, just a little bit more information. So poverty, as in the rest of the world, women are poorer than men. And of course, poverty in older age, because women live longer, they earn less, and they accumulate accumulate less for their pension or for their retirement, so overall they end up being older and poorer than men. And also domestic violence, which is another, is a part of the index which I will not go deeply into. So what I'll do is I'll stop now. I can and take questions. I can give more data, but I think it's a lot to kind of fathom in one time. So I'll just take questions. I'll be happy to answer anything.
The microphone?
Pardon?
We need the microphone for the translation.
Hello, I'm Kimiyya from the Lithuanian Center for Quality Advancement. I really know this index, AG index, and it's really huge work what you did. So very good that you have these measures to compare with the other countries. So my question is, what was the most difficult for you? Because I know with violence issues we always face. And how are you going to use this index, in which purpose, and what are your plans for future?
Okay. So, thank you. Okay, so we started this project about 5 years ago. It's the 5th year that we'll be coming out with a full report. We try to do it annually and cover all these areas and then add more. So first of all, there's definitely two big issues. One is funding, just getting the funding to do this work. It's statistical work. You need a research team to do it. The other factor, important factor, is what data exists. How can you collect the data, and how can you make sure that you have data that is collected the same way over time, that can be measured over time. It's very important, and of course, most places like the data that is collected by the state, in certain areas it just doesn't exist. And violence is a good example, because violence against women this data is not collected systematically. It's not collected in a regular way, in a way that you can follow over time. We use rape crisis centers data, and we try, to maintain as much a systematic collection as we can. But if you saw in the EIGE, in the European Gender Index, they just leave it blank. There's no information about violence. Yeah. So they just leave it open. They just say, yes, there is violence against women, but there is no data, and we will keep showing that it's a blank area. It's very important. What we do with the index is, first of all, we try to go with the findings, go to decision makers, go to main institutions that collect data and main institutions that make decisions about policy, and show them the information and try to convince them that this is we do workshops, we do different training programs. We try to show this kind of conceptualizations allow for a new policy to develop, which will advance gender equality. And sometimes our main purpose is just to push them to collect data systematically. So this is it's just a major goal that is part of our work.
Un instant. Je voulais témoigner qu'à Haïfa, il y a un centre d'accueil des femmes victimes de violences commun entre les Arabes israéliennes et les Israéliennes de confession israélite, et qui lutte aussi contre les discriminations vécues par les femmes homosexuelles. Et comme c'est difficile de faire des statistiques, et c'est difficile aussi parce qu'il y a dans les mentalités, que ce soit des Arabes israéliennes ou des Israéliennes de confession israélite, des mentalités qui font que la famille c'est la famille, on ne rentre pas, ça ne nous regarde pas, comme on connaît dans nos pays, mais c'est très fort en raison du poids de la religion. La question. Et ensuite, on passe à notre ami du Portugal.
J'ai une question,
oui, il y a une question ici et à Nice.
Good morning, my name is Hanna Stotz, I'm from the Czech Women's Lobby, and I'd like to ask what's the response of the public, of the society, what's the when you brought it up to the discussion, what is the biggest issue that the society is actually is willing to discuss as a problem within the society? Thank you.
I think it's hard to convince the public that you need the full picture. You need the different domains. You need to look at what's happening in the labor market, what's happening in family, what's happening in education, what's happening in health. You need the whole picture in order to really go into the deeper structures of gender inequality. It's hard. It's a hard concept to accept. But I think we have been able to convince that when you look at gender gaps, it's very convincing. When you compare men and women over time, it's very convincing. Because if you look only at what has happened to women, you do see advancement for sure. But when you compare and you see that over time men have advanced more in most areas except education, then you can make a claim. You can make a stronger claim. So I think this is a powerful tool.
Merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. Je vais parler en français. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut revoir le premier slide, s'il vous plaît? Le premier slide, la première... Est-ce qu'on peut voir le premier slide? The first one, yeah, the first slide, yes. No, the first one. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I know that you put Arab society. En français, en français. J'ai vu que vous avez mis société arabe dans votre étude. Alors, moi, j'aimerais avoir comprendre un peu mieux. Est-ce que vous parlez là des Palestiniens sous occupation, dans les territoires occupés, ou bien vous parlez des Arabes d'Israël? Et si vous parlez des Palestiniens sous l'occupation, je crois qu'ils ne font pas partie de population cible d'Israël. Et si vous parlez des Arabes israéliens, je crois que pour le travail scientifiquement prouvé, je crois que tous ils sont des citoyens israéliens et doivent être considérés tous dans les statistiques de la même façon et ne pas les considérer sur une base religieuse ou raciale. Je crois que pour la neutralité scientifique, il est important de parler israélien, de citoyens israéliens tout court. Donc j'aimerais bien avoir une explication par rapport à ça et merci.
En complément, la question posée.
Esther, j'aimerais bien avoir sa réponse.
Je sais bien, je ne vais pas répondre. Je voulais avoir un complément pour répondre les deux. Je voudrais avoir un complément de réponse à ce qu'il a dit. Dans la société israélienne, actuellement, combien y a-t-il d'Arabes israéliens par rapport à la population totale? Je voudrais juste me rappeler, parce que ça a changé.
Mais attends, moi j'ai un problème par rapport à ça. Non, par rapport à Esther, j'ai un problème aussi. Mais Esther, on parle de citoyens ou bien on parle est-ce qu'on peut parler d'arabe français ou d'arabe italien ou de rome français, rome, etc. Est-ce que lorsqu'on fait une étude scientifique, est-ce qu'on est obligé de mettre les appartenances raciales ou religieuses? Je crois que c'est un peu raciste, quoi.
Après, je te répondrai.
Sure. I think I should just make it clear. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you what we look at and then discuss the reasoning for it. So yes, we look at Arabs who are Israeli citizens, only at Arabs